Everyone, so I'm going to go over the live earthworm observation lab for the absent people. So just open this and follow along. So I'm going to read the top part because this will apply to some of the answers. So the primary feature that sets annelids apart from the other worm-like animals is segmentation. The repetition of body parts or segments, also called metamerism, can be seen both externally and internally in the earthworm. We won't see the internal until we do the dissection. Each body segment is called a metamer. Segmentation allows for heightened complexity, body structure, and function. Segmented worms have greater control of movement and more advanced body systems than the other worms, flatworms and roundworms. Living organisms are exposed to a multitude of environmental changes over their lifetime. Changes in the environment serve as an external stimuli that result in a behavioral change or response in the organism. For example, a pill bug, like a little roly-poly, will move away from a bright light. The light serves as a stimulus for the response. The movement away from the light. The movement of an organism in response to a stimulus is known as a taxis. A taxis is a behavioral response that produces a movement towards or away from a stimulus when present. Taxis behaviors are classified according to the stimulus producing the response. The presence of stimuli such as light, water, gravity, touch, or chemicals can result in a taxis behavior. If the organism moves towards a stimulus, then the movement is referred to as a positive taxis. Avoidance or movement away from the stimulus is a negative taxis. A phototaxis, photo means light, is a response to light. Hydrotaxis, hydro means water, is an organism movement response towards moisture or water. Chemotaxis is an organism's response to a specific chemical. And geotaxis is an organism's response in movement in response to gravity, because geo means earth. And thigmotaxis is an organism's response to touch. So the first 8 questions are for the external surface. So number step 1 says, with your finger, feel the top side of the earthworm. Describe how the earthworm feels. So you'll just write your answers here. Just put a space between each one of your answers. So on the top side, the dorsal side of the earthworm, it's like very smooth, slimy, and you can kind of feel like with the segments. 2 says run a finger along the underside of the worm. Can you feel the presence of the small setae, those little bristle hair-like structures? So on the underside, I feel my finger, I can feel, it almost feels like a little more gritty, like sandpaper, like my finger's catching on it. So yeah, I can feel it. How might the setae be useful? From the notes that we did the day before, the setae are used for helping in movement, so it helps to anchor into the ground while it moves. Look at the underside of your worm. Under the dissecting microscope, can you see the setae? Describe what they look like and how many can you see in each segment. We're not going to be able to count them, but I'm going to try to see if I can get it underneath the dissecting microscope and show you guys. I don't know if it'll work. Give me a second. Oh, he already moved out of the field of view. Oh, you can briefly see the little hair-like, do you see those little hair-like structures? Those are the setae. You briefly see it. Then it says, where do you think they exchange? Oh, do you see any obvious external respiratory structures? So if they had respiratory structures, they have like an opening for breathing, no gills, no lungs, nothing looks like it breathes. So no, there is no external. Where do you think the exchange of gases occur? In the earthworm, it's going to occur directly through the skin. So diffusion of gases happen through the skin of the earthworm. So no respiratory organs, but it does have circulatory organs. Then number 7 says the earthworm looks shiny, waxy on its outer surface. What structure provides this waxy covering? That waxy outer protective covering is called the cuticle. We learned that in the notes. It says, based on number 6, why must the earthworm stay moist, and how does the structure number 7 aid in this? So they must be able to stay moist in order to do diffusion of gases, respiration through their skin. So they must stay moist for diffusion of gases to happen, and the cuticle helps keep in the moisture, help protect it, and keep the earthworm moist. Okay, for the next section is about movement. So as your earthworm moves, record 5 measurements in centimeters of your earthworm. So I'm putting them on the counter. It's kind of plop him. So first one's about 20 centimeters. Second one's about 18. Third one's about 15. Pop them down again. Oop, that one he's shorter. Let's put like 13 because he got pretty short for that time. Was that 4? I don't know. Put it down again. 19. And this says, why is there so much variation in lengths of your earthworm? It's because they use their muscles to contract their bodies. Watch closely as your earthworm crawls and moves. Describe the earthworm's movement. So kind of like the one before. It moves around with his head. So that's the head right there. Kind of feels around. And you can see the movement of each of the segments, the muscles kind of contract and pull in and expand. So it's almost like I think the term is called peristalsis. So it kind of just contracts and pulls the muscles to move. How does the earthworm move? Number 12. What muscles and structures help it move? Well, from the notes yesterday, it has 2 types of muscles in its body. One is called longitudinal muscles. The other one is circular muscles. And the other structure is the setae. The setae helps anchor itself while it moves. Flip yourself over. 13, observe and compare the movement of the earthworm across a spread out paper towel on the table to the movement of the worm on the surface of the table. Describe how a smooth surface affects this movement. So it's not moving a whole bunch, but it seems to move quicker on this flat, more smooth surface. I thought it wouldn't be able to move as much because the setae can't really grip. But I think what's happening is that the setae on the paper towel is gripping, and so it's not moving as quickly. So I would just put down that it moves more slowly on the paper towel because the setae kind of grasp at the paper towel and grip onto it. Then number 14 says, what structures help the worm move better on the paper towel? Will be similar in the soil. Okay, so that's the answer. It would be the setae helps it grip, but it seems to move quicker on the smooth surface because it's not actually gripping. But it would help it dig better in the soil. So then this part right here, you're gonna drag them to the correct location. The only thing you have to do, so I told them in class, click on the image and right click with your 2 fingers and hit send back. So send to the back, because otherwise you can't put these terms in front. So I'm just gonna show it on the actual worm. So the one that says dorsal, you can actually put like right on the back of the worm. So this darker side right here, is the dorsal side. The top side of the worm is the dorsal. This structure right here, you can't see as well. It's so dark, but you can see on the picture right there. You can see on the underside, that is the clitellum. This end, so the side that is closer to the clitellum is the mouth. So this is anterior, while this is, and that's the anus, that's gonna be posterior. So that very first segment, that little lip-like structure, that's the prostomium, where the mouth is. And then this end right here, that opening, that is the anus. And then this underside, you don't have to label it, is the ventral side, the lighter side. So then you'll just drag those to the correct location. Okay, so response to touch. So some of these answers, well, I'm not gonna give it to you. You're gonna go look in the reading and find it. So how does the worm respond to when you gently touch the anterior end? So the head where the mouth is. And then how does it respond when you touch the posterior end? So I'd say that it just kind of like contracts and kind of just moves more whenever I start, for the one for the anterior end, when I touch the anterior end, it just doesn't really pull away, but it just starts moving a lot more. It becomes a lot more active. The posterior end, nothing really happens, so not much movement. So what type of behavioral response or taxis this is called? So you're gonna go back to the reading. So is it gonna be like phototaxis, chemotaxis, one of those? Well, now that end is moving. So you can put it down. It starts moving and wriggling whenever you touch it. Response to gravity. So put the worm at the edge of the table and describe what happens when the head extends over the edge of the table. Yeah, so this is the anterior head end. So I'm gonna put it slightly hanging over, and then we're gonna see what happens. Please do what you're supposed to be doing. Come on. I think they're tired because they've been messed with all day long. You're supposed to be pulling yourself up. Come on, come on, come on. Let's try it so he can grip on a little bit more. Come on. So it's using its posterior tail end to kind of like go backwards and pull itself back up. See? So the paper towel allowed it to grip on a lot better, the setae. So in response to gravity, hanging off the edge, it pulled itself back up on the table instead of going towards the floor. And this is flip the worm over on its back, describe what the worm does. So when you're upside down, you want to be right side up. So it was on its back side, and it just rolls itself all the way over. Well, that's the edge. So what type of behavior, number 20, what type of behavior response or taxis is this called for number 16 and 17? So go back up to the reading. What type of taxis is it? Is it chemotaxis, phototaxis? Which one is it? Okay, response to water. Put the wet paper towel on one side of the tray and then the damp one on the other side. Place the worm on the dry paper towel and observe and describe what the earthworm does. They haven't really been cooperating much for this one. Get the water to make it a little bit more damp. So I'm going to put him, there's the head in, where the dry end is. Let's see if he moves over. And oh, yep, there's worm poop. Yep, so the worm moves to the wet side of the paper towel, and he keeps on trying to go over the edge, which earlier he pulled himself up. So for 21, just to say that he went from the dry side to the wet side, and then up above, what type of taxis is this when he goes to the side with the moisture? Response to chemicals. I'm gonna dip a Q-tip in some isopropyl alcohol and put it near his head and see what we cannot put on their skin because it's toxic. Come on. Oh, do you see that? He turned away from it. So it can't touch their skin. I can put it towards the head. So his head kind of shrunk up, and and he pulls away from the alcohol. So describe that. Ooh. Yep. And then for 26, or no, sorry, 24, put down what type of taxis that is. So responding to a chemical. Okay, response to light. I don't think I can do it with my phone. I was gonna use the flashlight. Actually put him underneath the light and see what happens. See if he'll just move away. So some of the classes use their phone flashlight, put them in the tray and put a cupboard on one side, a little bit more shade, and see what happened. Come back and see if he moves again. Because the light will dry them out. Yeah, so just put that they move away from the light. And then for number 26, put down what type of taxis that is. Is that all the taxis ones? Yep. So the last part, 2 parts, reproduction. Differences in the physical appearances between the males and females of some species is called sexual dimorphism. If you look at the other group's worm, is there any major difference in physical features? So we grab another earthworm. you look at them, other than size, there's really no major differences in physical appearance other than the general size. Then 28, can you tell if your earthworm is a male or female? Why or why not? Trick question. If you did the notes, you should know this. Earthworms, so no, you cannot tell difference. They are all the same because they are hermaphroditic. They're monoecious, so they're both male and female. 29, what is the name of the obvious external reproductive structure you can see in the earthworm? So from the notes yesterday, we learned about that. The structure right here where they attach the other earthworm at during reproduction. You can kind of see the underside right there. And it also secretes like the cocoon with the eggs. That is called the clitellum. And you can actually see on the underside right there, this little, it's not going to focus, I don't think. Those little holes right there, those are the genital pores or the sperm ducts. So they attach right here at one end and the clitellum over here in the other one, and they exchange sperm. If they're kind of like that, that's how they would do that. 30, what is the purpose and the function of the structure? So like I said, it's where the worm attaches to the other worm to exchange sperm and receive sperm. And it also secretes the cocoon around the eggs when it lays it. Okay, 30, the last few questions. Where it says other structures, features. 31, what is the name of the lip-like structure? That is the first segment of the worm. That very first segment right there that covers the mouth, the pointed end right there, that is the prostomium. And that's from the notes. Describe the physical difference between the head, mouth, anterior end to the anus posterior end in the earthworm. And how can you tell it apart? The head end is more pointed. You can see the prostomium, they move a lot more with it. It is also closer to the clitellum. And that's the anterior end. The posterior end looks more like a spearhead and it's more flattened, and that's the anus. Yeah, so the anterior end is a little bit more pointed at the end and is closer to the clitellum. And it's actually a lot darker towards the anterior end than the posterior end. Compare the coloration of the worm on the dorsal and ventral side. Which side is darker? As you can see, this is the dorsal side, the back side of the worm. And it is obviously darker than the ventral side, the underside of the worm. It's a lot lighter. And you're going to see that on the worm that you're going to dissect too. Why would you think this side being darker would be an advantage? So when they're in the soil, having a darker side, they're going to blend in with the darker soil, so they are not going to be eaten by like a bird or a predator that wants to eat it. So it's going to camouflage a lot better into the soil with this side like being visible from the top, like bird's eye view. So it's going to blend in with the soil a lot better. And the last question, 35. Each body segment is called a metamere. As best as you can, count and record the number of segments, metameres, not including the clitellum of your earthworm. In the notes, it said there's over 100 segments. Let's try to count the number of segments from the front end, the anterior end, up until the clitellum. So I'm going to try my best. So the very first one is the prostomium. That's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 27, 28, 29. So there's 32 metameres, segments, from the prostomium, the mouth, the anterior end, up until the clitellum. And that's only like a third, fourth of the worm. So if, yeah, that's 32 segments, and that's 14. I mean, yeah, so times it by like 4. So that is the live earthworm observation lab. So make sure you fill this out and turn it in. And then, like some of the answers, the Taxus ones were up here in the reading. And we learned about some of these structures in the notes. So make sure you've done the notes if you haven't. And if you have any questions on this, let me know. But I mean, I gave you pretty much all the answers to fill out on the lab and turn that in. Yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, please let me know.